Now, let's look at the question. So, most of the time, what you need to do when you get such questions is that you need to assess the data that you have. If possible, it will be better if you draft your data down. That is how we solve management accounting questions. Always make sure that you actually gather your data. Okay, you store your data down so you know how to go about it. So what I'm going to do first is that once I have this question, I'm going to first follow the steps that I told you about. And what were the steps? I said the first thing I would always need to do is one, to determine my sales mix. So one, I will determine my sales mix. Okay, so determine sales mix. That's the first thing I do. So how do I get my sales mix? So to get a sales mix per this question, it tells me that for every 5 units of M that is sold, 1 unit of N will be sold. So this is what I'll do. I'll bring my product here, product, bring the sales mix here. Okay. Okay. So in that case, I know that for M, if I sell 5 units of M, for N, I sell 1 unit. And also, if I put it together, then I have 6 units. That means my sales unit is 5 out of 6. That's my sales mix, and 1 out of 6. Now that I have my sales mix, the next thing I need to do is to get my contribution per unit of product. And also, so get your contribution per unit. And how do you get your contribution per unit? We know contribution is sales minus your variable cost per unit, right? So we have product M and product N. Let's try to get our contribution first. So we know that it tells us that what? M sells for 7 per unit. So we have our selling price here. And selling price, we know that we have M to be 7 cedis and we have N to be 15 cedis. We can see it there. So what's the variable cost? Variable cost for the first guy, which is M, is 2.94. And then for the other guy, that's 4.4. Okay, so once we have this, we can start getting the contribution. Okay, so I think the first product gives us 4.06 as our contribution per unit. And the second one gives us 10.60 as our contribution per unit. So that's our contribution per unit. Okay, it's better you write it per unit as in PER than using the stroke. I think that talks better about your approach. Okay, so let's go down the line. Now that we have our contribution, remember that I told you earlier on that you need to get your weighted contribution. So the third step is to get your weighted average contribution. Because you have 2 or more products, you can't use the normal contribution, okay? You can't use the normal contribution. So you need your weighted contribution. And how do you get your weighted contribution? It's actually taking what? Each product, I get it. Each product sales mix and weighting it by the contribution, okay? That's, you are weighting, you are finding weighted average. So I'm going to bring the product here, bring its contribution, okay, bring its sales mix, and bring its weighted average. It's like how you calculate mean. So you have X, you have F, and you have F of X, okay? That's how you go about it, just like what you do in mathematics. So you have M with contribution of 4.06 with sales mix of what? 5/6. Then we have N, which is 10.60 with sales mix of 1/6. Okay, so that is what you will do to weight it. On the other hand, you can just multiply 4.06 by 5 and 10.6 by 1. Then when you finish, you divide all by 6. It will still give you the same answer. Let me get my calculator. So I think with your 4.06 by 5 over 6, it's going to give us 3.38. Because it's money, you can decide to use 2 decimal places, 3.38. Okay, and then the 10.6 by 1 over 6 gives us 1.76. That gives us 1.77. Let's make it 1.77. Okay, so now if we put this together, this now gives us a weighted average contribution. Okay, so this weighted average contribution gives us 5 points. That's 3.38 plus 1.77. I think it's 1.67 rather. That's 10.6 by 1 over 6. 1.77, yes. So 1.77 plus 3.38. That's 5.15. So we have 5.15 being our weighted average contribution, which is now like our normal contribution. Okay, so now that we have this, we've got our contribution as 5.5. That's like our contribution per unit now. And the question is now saying we should find a break-even point for Jinx. So now the fourth thing we need is our what? Break-even point. So it says we should get our break-even what point? And break-even point, when you get it, mostly you get it in units first. Okay, and how do you get this in units? We know that our break-even point in units is actually going to be what? Our fixed costs all over our contribution per unit. But now it's going to be our weighted average contribution per unit. Okay, weighted average contribution per unit. So per the question, it tells us our fixed cost is 123,600 Ghana cedis. Now we divide this by our weighted average contribution of 5 cedis, 15 pesos per unit. Okay, and that gives us the value of our break-even point in units. 123,600 divided by 5.15. And this ends up giving us 24,000 units. Okay, 24,000 units. Okay, 24,000 units. That means the company, if I'm to interpret this, the company should sell 24,000 units of both M and N to break even. But the thing is, we don't know how much of M and N individually should be sold to break even, right? We don't know. So what we have to do is that we have to use the sales mix to spread and get the individual mix or the individual product. So the next thing I would do, which is my step 5, is to get the break even per product, right? That's the break even per product. And how do I get the break even per product? I'm just going to say, okay, so for M, I know that we have 24,000 units overall, but for this 24,000, I know that for every 5 we sell 1 for M. So I'll spread it in the sales mix, which is a 5 over 6, right? To get how much should be sold. So by 5 on 6, that means we should sell 20,000 units of M, and also to break even. And when it comes to N, we know that, okay, this same 24,000 units spread in the sales mix of N, which is 1/6, should give us 4,000 also. So overall, the total 24,000 units we were having shall be spread 20,000 for M and what? 4,000 for N. So that gives us our break-even units. Also, now, if we want to get a selling price that should make us break even, it's straightforward. So that means we need sales to break even also. So let's say that is my, is it 6 or 7? Okay, that is 6. So sales to break even, right? So sales to break even, you can use CS ratio, but it will be long. So since you have the break even for each of the product, you can just multiply that by the selling price for each product, and then you are good to go, right? So what I can do is that if I want to get the sales, not so for product AM, I know that, okay, the break-even units are 20,000 units, and also to break even, and the selling price for this guy is what? 7 cedis. So if I multiply by the 7 cedis, that's 20,000 by 7 cedis. That means I must make what? Revenue of 140,000 Ghana cedis to break even. When I look at N, which is what? 4,000 units to break even. That means I must sell what? That one was 15. That was the selling price. So the 4,000 units at 15 gives us 60,000. That means I must sell at 60,000 to also break even. That means the sales revenue to break even is actually 200,000 Ghana cedis. That means 200,000 Ghana cedis is what we must incur to break even. So this is the first question on multiple product CVP that we are looking at. I'll look at another one and then we can move. But then there's another option or another scenario or another way you can solve this question, that is using the contribution to sales ratio approach. Is that okay? So this is alternative or method 2. Okay. Alternative method. Okay, so you have to know all the two. The reason is that some questions will not allow you to use the first one, but I always prefer the first one I just taught you. You get the idea. So the alternative method is that first I need to determine my contribution to sales ratio. Is that okay? I need to determine my contribution to sales ratio. That's the first thing that you do. Once you're able to do that, then you are going to use your contribution to sales ratio to get the sale. I get it. That one is just for getting the sales. Once you know the sales, you know the selling price. So when you divide by that, you should get the units that was used to get the sales. I hope that is clear. So this is step 1, step 2, step 3. I think we had all of them. So we can move. Oh, I think the other steps I did are missing. No problem. Okay, so let's look at the next, the alternative method. Okay, so for the alternative method, the first thing I need to do is to get my CS ratio. How do you get your contribution to sales ratio? I need a weighted average contribution to sales ratio. So first of all, let's get the contribution, then we can get contribution to sales ratio. So I can say from above, also, I knew that the contribution for contribution, I know for M, the contribution was what? 4.06, and then for N, the contribution was what? 10.6. Not so. So if I want CS ratio, I know that CS ratio is contribution per unit over selling price per unit. It could also be done in total. Since we don't have total, let's take M. So M contribution to sales ratio is going to be what? 4.06 over our selling price of 7. Also, which gives us how much? Then we come to N, which is what? 10.6 over 15 as our contribution per sales ratio. So 4.06 divided by 7 is going to give us 0.58, which is a weighted average, our contribution to sales for M, and then 10.6 over 15, giving us 0.706 or 0.707. The reason is because it's a recurring decimal. Usually when it's a recurring decimal, you have to maintain the fraction, but let's use it this way. Now that we have our what? Contribution to sales ratio, the next thing we need to do, I know we have the previous data, that is why I'm not going, but we should have calculated the contribution straight. Once we get the contribution, then the next thing we need to do is to get the CS ratio. So now that I have this, the next thing that I'm going to do is that I need to now get my weighted average CS ratio. And how do you get your weighted average CS ratio? You weight with the sales mix. So I know if I take my product here, I take my CS ratio, then I have the weighting also, the weight, which is the sales mix. Okay, the weight is the sales mix. Then now that gives me the weighted average. So if I take product M, the CS ratio was hello. Yes. Who was that? Who kicked us car? Kicked us. Scar on my pocket. Prepaid ni na wama sase weja ayon nisi so. Endum ye na ayon nisi so nti kakra na bia light ni sheki me pisa light up. Me nim na me me de hu se waso ayon. So me nko outside. When when do prepaid 200 ni na ase. Dem ato de oba de oba. Sanye hwe. Wanye hwe. Wadi nti amafo. Nkasi we nke be share. Na pen box. Dem ato ni ko di we. De oba. Ah, sama pa. O de oba. Okay, so this is the approach. So once we get the CS ratio, what did we get for the CS ratio? I have even forgotten. I think we had 0.58 and something. Let's see. Okay, 0.58 and 0.707. So I think the CS ratio for this guy was 0.58. And then for N was 0.707. Okay, so what we do here is that we just multiply by the sales mix. This is 5/6. This is 1/6. Okay, then once we do this, what we need is that we need to multiply. So 0.58 by 5/6. And that gives us 0.483. Then we have 0.707 by 1/6. And that gives us 0.1178. So let's make it 118. Now we sum this up and that becomes our weighted average contribution to sales ratio, right? Okay, that's our weighted average contribution to sales ratio. So 0.483 plus 0.118. That ends up giving us 0.601. Okay, it should be 0.6 exactly because of the rounding off. So let's just make it approximately 0.6 so that it looks more legible. Okay, so we don't want the decimal. So now that we've got our contribution to sales ratio, our weighted average, we know that anytime you want sales to break even, not so sales to break even, it's actually what? Your fixed costs over your CS ratio. But this one to be your fixed cost over your weighted average CS ratio. Not so. So over your weighted average CS ratio. So what then do we get? So getting your weighted your fixed cost over your weighted average CS ratio is easy. We know our fixed cost is 123,600. Not so. We divide this by 0.6, and this should give us the sales that will make us break even. If it gives us 200,000, then truly this is exactly the sale we expected. So 123,600 divided by 0.6, we end up with 206,000. Yes, it's closer. It's because of the rounding offs, but that is not bad. So now that we know that this is 200,000, we need to what? Make 200,000 to actually what? Break even. We need to make 200,000 to actually what? Break even. So now that you have this, also, so the company needs to sell 200,000 or make revenue of 200,000 to break even, right? So now that we know that you need 200,000 cedis approximately, you see the first one we did gives us the exact amount. But what if the question didn't give us enough data to do that? It just gave us the CS ratio. Then we need to use this method. So now that I have that, what do I need to do? I need to get the sales revenue for each product, right? So I need sales, that's the break-even sales for each product. So how do I get break-even sales for each product? I told you anytime you want for each product, you must use the sales mix. So now if I take M, I'm just going to take what? That is our sales mix of 5/6 and share weight it according to what? The 200,000. And when I take N, I'll take my 1/6 and now multiply by what? The 200,000. They should give me what? The sales revenue for each product, right? And if it's able to give me the 140,000 and then the distance that I got, the 60,000 that I got, you remember, it should give us something closer, or if not closer, it should give us the same amount. So you see, when I multiply, I get 1,166,667, and then this one, that's 1/6 by 200,000. That gives me 33333. Okay, so when we add, we are still getting 200,000. But this is not the end, as we want to get what? The units that should be sold. So if I want the break-even units that should be sold, I want break-even units to be sold. Now I know that break-even units, I get in it. My sales that I got is actually what? My break-even units times the selling price per unit. Not so. So now that I have the sales, what do? I can divide by the selling price to get the break-even unit. That means that break-even units is actually what? My sales over selling price per unit to arrive at my break-even unit. Not so. So therefore, we say that for product M, if I want to get my break-even unit, I must take the 166,667 and divide by the selling price per unit, which is 7 cedis. Then this should give me how many units we must sell to break even, which is 166,667. divided by 7. So we end up with 23,809, which is approximately 24,000. Okay, 24,000 units approximately, because of our rounding offs, that is why. But we should get the same break-even units, something closer. You see here, I'm getting 24,000 units. And then when it comes to, it was 23,000, sorry, 23,000. When it comes to this guy, that is product N, we are getting, what is it? That is 1/6 times, was it 1/6? So, sorry, I think that one, we've already done that. What we need to do is just divide, right? So for product N, what we are going to do is that we are now going to take the sales of 33333, now divide by the selling price of 15. And that should give us 33333 divided by 15. That gives us 22222. Okay, that's 2222. 2222. So these are the two approaches that you need to use in solving multi-product CVP analysis.